I'm Marian Vita of the VAB, and I welcome you to our Industry Spotlight conversation. And our purpose with Industry Spotlight is to bring you fresh insights and ideas from our partners across the industry. And today, the topic is data-driven linear TV, which of course combines the best of the TV platform with the best of data targeting and optimization. And we are pleased to hear from two leaders working successfully in this area, Alberto Orihuela, co-founder and CMO of Fubo, and Philippe Engelbrecht, co-founder and CEO of Atari. And Atari is Fubo's agency partner, and the two have worked very closely in developing the buying strategy. And they are going to share with us their success strategies for employing data-fueled linear approach, also some specific ways and guidance on how to get started. So thank you both for your time today. And now I will hand it over to you.
We're excited to be here. So, hello everybody. I am Philippe, and just for those people who don't know Fubo yet, which sounds unbelievable, but just in case, I will have Alberto lead and tell us a little bit more about Fubo TV.
Beautiful. Thank you, Philippe, and I'm glad to be here today. Thanks for the invitation to come and share the story. Obviously, Fubo TV, it's a live TV streaming service dedicated for sports fans and their families. We started as a small streaming service focused on soccer, and over the years, we realized that there was really a bigger need to have a streaming service that was really focused around sports. And ultimately, on the way, you realize that sports fans also have family that is interested in a broader package. So we launched Fubo TV, which offers over 100 different channels across entertainment, sports, live TV, regional sports networks, Hispanic networks, international. And we pride ourselves in being half the cost of cable, which, as most of the folks here on the call are probably well aware, there's not a lot of happy cable consumers out there, and we're looking to solve that solution. So Fubo TV, it's available across a variety of platforms. So you can watch the product in all the devices that you see here in the presentation: Roku, Fire TV, Android TV. And the point is to make it very easy for traditional cable subscribers to continue to have that lovely live TV experience, but on their favorite connected device, on their TVs, mobile phone, and beyond. And for some history, our marketing mix is one that perhaps is not unlike a lot of the digital savvy-centric companies out there, where we look to find the best opportunities across digital marketing for optimization. All of our campaigns are targeted towards acquiring subscribers for tactical and effective CPA, which in our case is a trial acquisition cost. And so we spend a lot of time looking at digital campaigns and optimizing digital campaigns in that manner. We also played a bit in audio, where we have tested with podcasting and radio and have done some improvements on that category. And then lastly, an interesting channel for us is also connected devices. As you would imagine, cord-cutting consumers are using Roku, are using Fire TV, Xbox, and some of the platforms here. And so it's important for us to ensure that we're advertising to that audience on those devices. And yet TV, it's one area that traditionally was quite challenging for us. For some context, we had done TV in two different locations prior to starting to work with Atari. And traditionally, the approach was one where I would say at a high level, it was not as agile in how we approach our campaigns than what we have achieved today. So in this presentation, hopefully we'll lay out some of the foundations and some of the things that we have learned along the way in order to really optimize television to perform in line with a lot of the digital channels where we are spending capital today. Traditionally we bought the initial non-remnant inventory, which is to say that we were committing ourselves ahead of time to purchasing a block of inventory for specific networks, which also meant, because you have that guaranteed placement, also meant that we were paying a higher CPM for those particular channels. And while that guaranteed was great, it was also challenging in that we couldn't optimize the campaigns as much in real time. And you'll see as we speak today that is one of the key elements in how we get TV to succeed, which is the ability to iterate through placements over time. Also, one last thing is that our creative process was very different. In the early days, we would go off for a weekend and we would shoot a commercial, as the one that you're seeing here on screen. And from that particular message, it was very challenging to iterate on the particular message that was being conveyed on the spot. Other than the end card, we were locked in on one particular execution, and it was very hard to deviate from that. And so our creative tactical approach has also evolved in partnering with Atari, and we'll speak a little more in breadth into that. Thereby, a new approach to TV.
There you go. Thank you, Alberto. So in that new approach for Fubo TV laid into Atari, maybe a quick introduction to Atari. Not everybody on this webinar may know about us. We are a data and analytics company. We're focused on buying and measuring ads across TV, and obviously that's both linear and streaming TV. In the strangest way, that's actually the only thing we do, but I like to think we do it well. We work with brands direct, many clients, well over 100. You can see some of them here. As you can tell, there's a great variety in industries or verticals. There's also a good variety in company stage, right? We have companies who kind of just come out of their Series A VC type of investment, and we have public companies like Fubo TV. And now, if there's one thing, despite that variety, that all of these brands or clients have in common is that when they started on TV with Atari, they actually started with incredibly small budgets. Just as a point of reference, I used to be a TV advertiser myself at one point in history, and my kind of buy-in price to the table was about $3 million. All of these brands, or most of these brands here, will have started with as little as $100,000, which was also the case for Fubo TV. And I let Alberto talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and that is a really good point, because one of the things that we realized early on is that we were committing ourselves from the first few campaigns that we run to really investing large quantities of capital at the onset on TV, which made it really tough to take a more scientific and iterative approach to television. So when we first partnered with Atari, it was clear that we wanted to test our way into an effective campaign on television. So early on, we essentially identified all the networks that we carried on Fubo, and we said, guys, where do we see the opportunities to really buy audience at reasonable CPMs that we believe will respond to our campaign? But not only just the belief of that it will work, then the second element is the measurement and ensuring that that audience and those campaigns are performing effectively. So the approach with Atari was one where we're initially focusing on a small array of networks, gathering data back on a trial acquisition cost perspective, and iterating, adding additional networks into the mix, and iterating until the point that our campaign started to reach scale. And what you're seeing here on the slide, I mentioned that the effectiveness of the attribution piece is particularly important, because you want to ensure that your campaign it's delivering the results, not just from purely theoretical brand awareness point of view, but also in the KPIs that matter for you. But for our use case, it was particularly challenging in that Fubo TV is a service that has extremely volatile traffic. As you would expect, anytime that there is a college football game on a weekend, El Clasico, a Super Bowl, our traffic is extremely spiky. In fact, if you look at that chart on the bottom right side, you see, I believe that might have been a Champions League game where you see our traffic completely spiking up. And part of the challenge in attributing TV in a quantitative manner was trying to figure out how do we identify those moments and be able to attribute them, not just on the basis of if a spot had run simultaneously with that spike, we might have misattributed the credit attributed to that spot. So we wanted to be very thoughtful in creating a model that took into account the volatility of our site traffic in order to properly credit television. And the Atari team was truly instrumental in helping us achieve that.
Cool. Now, so obviously at Atari we do a lot of measurement, and we can spend a lot of time about that, but it's really interesting to also highlight that good measurement is only valuable to the extent that there's strong media buying, and the agility in media buying matters a lot. If you remember in one of the earlier slides, Alberto talked about kind of these higher CPM, higher reach spots. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that. They definitely kind of have their place and value in a campaign, but of course it can be expensive to start with those if you don't know what the outcome is. And so the ability to probe in media buying and then quickly shift media buying strategies based on the measurement can be instrumental to successful pilot and even campaign. So I want to kind of point out two things that we did here, just examples of things that we did with Fubo TV that worked out really well. What we see here is obviously running a spot during an NFL game. Just to provide a little bit of context, buying a spot of that nature, 30 seconds will easily cost $200,000-$300,000. So that's hard to kind of start with. And so what we might do is run fractional tests. We will buy that spot on a fractional audience, for example, an audience on satellite, an audience on streaming services. Obviously, it will cost a fraction of the price. In some cases, in this case, we literally had 87% savings for Fubo TV. But we still have enough data to truly get an understanding of what the fully fledged national version would have performed. And so these are kind of great tests that we can move along the way. And as long as you then can adjust the media buying to it, that will help us a lot in terms of outcomes. Another example here is national locals, maybe a little bit more complex, but literally what those are is we're wrapping up unsold local inventory and we're repackaging it as a pseudo national buy. So you're not going to reach the entire country, not 100% of the kind of potential audience, maybe 70%. As a matter of fact, you even don't know ahead what percentage of the audience you will reach. But in return for that, let me say inconvenience, you will also pay less, sometimes even pennies on the dollars. In the case of Fubo TV, we even got to a point of over 90% in savings. And so again, testing with an agility in media buying to then quickly adjust the strategies around that matter. But it's not just what you buy, but it's also how you buy things and what you pay for it. And let me generally refer to it as bid optimization. It's probably a term which is a little bit better understood in the digital world, but don't seem to be applied much in the world of TV advertising and linear TV advertising in particular. The price to buy a spot on linear TV will vary. It will vary by a lot of things. When you buy it, who else wants to try to buy the spot like the Super Bowl? How many spots are available in a given time frame? And obviously, one very important one is price. The more you pay, especially in a remnant auction, the more likely your chances of clearing, i.e. having your spot trafficked. And so what we will do, or one of the things that we will do at Atari, is actually try to get an understanding of what the relationship between the price paid is and the clearance in the auction. And it turns out that that relationship can be incredibly different for each network and even for each network day part entity. And you kind of see three examples. These are actually real data. Obviously, we have to obfuscate it a little bit. But you can see three examples here. For one network, the clearance might be double of that compared to another network. And so understanding those relationships and then in an agile way, changing your price rather than locking it in upfront weeks or months in advance can lead to much better outcomes. Quickly want to highlight this, and it's a little segue here, but often people will refer to TV advertising as offline media. We violently disagree with that at Atari. TV is not offline. For linear TV, we do not rely on, let's say, a small panel of 40,000 manually surveyed Nielsen households. Instead, we are going to use IP level data from smart TV providers. For what it's worth, Vizio and LG are kind of the two biggest players here, and that will give us access to 20 million devices and more. For streaming, it's even better. A company like Atari will work with every streaming publisher and obtain user agent details for every single impression delivered. So why do I talk about that? Well, it turns out that even some of the oldest metrics in the world of TV advertising, i.e. reach and frequency, can be kind of redeployed in a very agile media buying manner if you have the granularity in it. So what you see here is a reach and frequency study for Fubo TV. And so what you can see in the summer months is the campaign was mostly focused on driving awareness, potentially even consideration. Make sure that people know about Fubo TV. In the subsequent months, September and October, whilst we increased spends, we then changed it. We made sure that the networks that had most promise were then also effectively almost retargeted, i.e. we did the frequency optimization, driving conversions. And what it all means, if you kind of put all of this together alongside some of these other optimizations and agile buying, is actually quite impressive. So I'll let Alberto talk to that.
Yeah, and I think this is a really telling slide because it, frankly, at the onset, as you can see, there's always going to be volatility when you're starting a campaign and you're beginning to optimize. You're going to be making bets in networks and placements that might not necessarily work out. But if you have a methodology and a proper means of attribution to where you can iteratively optimize the placements of your spots over time, you can see what happens naturally here. So in the early stages of our campaign, we saw volatility in acquisition costs or trial acquisition costs, which is reflected in the blue line here. However, as you begin to optimize placement, networks, and so on, you can see the holy grail of a new channel acquisition, which is ultimately one where you can continue to scale your spend while retaining your acquisition costs at a relatively flat level. And that's obviously a great performance here on the Atari team.
Cool. And so if you put this all together, obviously for Fubo TV and Alberto's team, it meant that TV advertising becomes a little bit more evergreen. I would love, Alberto, if you could talk a little bit also about creative. It's an incredible lever in any campaign. You definitely exploited that very well. So we have a few slides on that. So I'm going to pass it back to you right away.
Yeah, awesome. So as we explained at the beginning, our approach to creative development early on was one that we wanted to remain agile in messaging and iteration. We wanted to move away from the concept where we would come up with the spot with an agency, go shoot it on a weekend, and have 4 or 5 different spots produced. And then our ability to change or iterate on messaging and that creative itself was quite challenging. So we instead brought creative development in-house and started to very aggressively iterate on a week-over-week basis on how we conveyed our message to consumers, and not only and being thoughtful also in terms of what time of the year are we on. Is sports relevant right now versus entertainment? What channel are consumers watching the spot on? In order to ensure that we have spots that are really driving message. So we bought creative development in-house. Right here on the screen, you're seeing potentially 4 versions of creatives that we had in the market, including ones in Spanish and in English. And I think that one of the beautiful components is that not just can we make, not just do we have a belief as to what or how a spot will perform on a particular media buy or placement, but also the data was able to confirm that. So one of the beautiful things of teaming up with Atari was the ability to see real-time performance on a relative basis for the various number of spots that we had on the platform. This ultimately, the goal here is to be able to allocate spend to the spots and the networks that are seeing the most performance, which is a fact that we have been able to achieve here relatively quickly. However, it's an ongoing process. We want to move away from one methodology where we're creating spots and not iterating. From here, we want to continue to add spots into the rotation and see if we can actually beat the ones that are currently on market. So that's a great turnout in there.
Yeah, kudos to your team, Alberto, for really kind of bringing this in-house and operating so aggressively. So we're coming to our key takeaways. You're on a roll there, Alberto. Keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think that the key takeaways here, one, you have to ensure that you have a testing approach methodology to TV that allows you to iterate as you are optimizing your campaign. Committing upfront to a media buy, even if you're getting guaranteed placement, can often be a very dangerous tactic in just not being able to really be agile in how you deploy your media across the areas that are seeing the most performance. And then the last piece here is ultimately, you want to have a strategy in television that is not just the seasonal approach where, hey, we say only during sports season we're going to be on TV, or only during Q1 where the CPMs are low. No, we want to have TV perform in line with our other digital channels where they're evergreen all year round. And the point is to have a process that allows you to iterate in your placements, your creative, and your tactics, so that even if the market and how you're speaking to consumers and what you're telling consumers is changing throughout the year, the process that you have in place allows you to be adaptive and iterative in your approach to television. So I think we have achieved that here, and hopefully this was a very strong overview. Philip, do you want to add to that?
I don't think I could have articulated it any better. So that's good. So this actually brings us to, well, I'm not sure, maybe just checking with our friends at the VAB if we have time for questions, maybe answers.
Thanks, Bryce, for giving us really this inside look at what, you know, the kind of the secret sauce that goes into making such a successful fly. And yeah, we do have a couple of questions. So my first is for Alberto. So I think the key takeaways are really helpful for potential brands out there that are looking to, you know, kind of move in this direction. Is there any one of them you would build on, or any you know, particular guidance you would give for a brand that wants to kind of move in this buying direction?
Yeah, I think it was a point worth repeating when you saw the performance of Fubo TV in terms of how TV was performing as a channel for us. In the early stages, there was quite a bit of volatility. It was uncertain that if you had only looked at the first 2 to 3 weeks of performance, you know, for a marketer, you might say, well, this might not necessarily be working out, and you might want to back up in your tactical approach to television. But it's very important to say, if we have a process in place that can allow us to find the opportunities that will yield long-term performance, you have to believe that process, and you can see ultimately the outcome here. So I would warn marketers against, you know, prematurely cutting out a channel that might not necessarily be seeing performance. You can see that it took us, you know, 3 into the 4th week until we started to really see the performance validate. And so you have to be comfortable and believe in the process to understand that it will take some time to optimize your campaigns. But if you have the right process in place, you ultimately see that come through. So do not give up prematurely. You have to believe in the process, and you have to continue to iterate, and ultimately you see the channel work for you as well.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something we talk about here a lot, about, you know, making sure that you give a campaign enough time to really live out its full impact. So it's great to hear, you know, from you, who's really, you know, in the thick of it every day and having to make those decisions, really, you know, kind of confirm that. So I think that's really helpful. So Philippe, you know, I worked on the agency side for many years before I joined the VAB. So I've been in your shoes to a certain extent. I know you talked a little bit about, you know, continuity and, you know, trying to be on air, you know, for continuous presence. Are there any findings, or is there any kind of philosophy or anything that you've learned that has kind of led you to say a continuity strategy is important? It's important to be on air, you know, as much as we can, to the extent that it drives, you know, trial and it drives signups.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's definitely an approach which we can demonstrate, and learnings from, you know, the past few years. So, I mean, look, the approach is mostly built on measurement, continuous and great measurements, right? And the ability in that to see certain performance metrics around profitability, things like customer acquisition costs or traffic trial acquisition costs, as Alberto referred to, seeing that kind of being in the right range, or components like return on ad spend. And so we can calculate this with great precision, built on IP level data at any given point in time. We can give our advertisers a sense of what is the immediate impact, the delayed impact, what is the view through versus the incremental impact of the campaign. And in that, there's always what I would call diamonds in the rough, or pockets of gold, so to speak, right? Where you know that, look, even at small spend or small TV investments, I am profitable, so I can keep doing this. Now, for those people who run those evergreen campaigns, and they're definitely a bit of a more mature TV advertiser, it's more about the short-term profitability for them. They know that during the so-called off times, they continue building awareness and consideration, which they hope to capitalize on at a later stage, right? So maybe during the off season in sports for Fubo TV, although Fubo TV is so much more than that now, you can kind of create the pent-up demand. The learning that we have is maybe on the flip side. We have had clients or advertisers who decide to go dark because they might not be convinced. And it's actually truly remarkable. In one instance, we had one brand who stopped advertising on TV, and 5 months later, if you looked at their kind of exits, post-sale surveys, 10% of the respondents will still refer to TV as kind of how did you learn about us? And that's truly remarkable. By the way, this is posted as a case study on the website, so for anybody interested, I recommend to check this out. So the cost of not being on TV can actually be quite expensive, right? Because you lose that momentum, you lose the potential halo effect or the positive effect that you will have on any of your other channels, digital channels. So our advice is find pockets of profitability and remain relevant.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I was going to ask about that sort of halo effect when the brands are off air. Do they experience any sort of benefit? And I think that's great that you kind of reaffirm that as well. And then another question, Philippe. So thinking about measurement, a great question is, how is Atari able to show the impact of TV separate from the impact from other campaigns that Fubo is running? So from Facebook, for example, or some other digital channels. How do you, or what steps do you take to try and isolate that impact?
Yeah, it's a concept that we generally refer to as incrementality, because in today's world, people are most likely exposed to a brand's multitude of campaigns that they're running, right? Facebook, out of home, TV, whichever it is. And what we're trying to do is create continuous control groups of people who have seen, who have been exposed to, in this case, to Fubo TV from multiple channels or Fubo TV only. And so we can see kind of what the performance difference between those two groups is, and we'll show this in our dashboard. And we don't really have a slide or a demo of this now, but if anybody interested, hit us up. But so when you use the Atari dashboard, you can truly change your measurement methodology from incremental to view through. And if you select view through, then you can also kind of change your attribution window a little bit like Facebook will do it. And so something that we're very, very proud of. We think it's super important, and it's definitely something that has been greatly appreciated by our clients.
And my last question's for Alberto. So, always, the last piece of any conversation is usually budget. And Philippe alluded to this earlier, but, what would you say to brands that maybe say, I don't have enough money to run in TV and make a real impact? What was your approach to budgeting? How did you guys get started and then evolve?
Yeah, I mean, so I think as Philippe was alluding to, we took a very similar approach to a lot of Atari clients, where we knew that we didn't want to invest millions of dollars into the channel right away without validating that there was a path to performance. So our initial campaign was quite small, and we narrowed the scope of networks to the ones that, along with the Atari team, believed that we're going to see the best performance in terms of the response rate of the audience relative to our consumers and what we already knew about what our consumers were watching on our platform. So a very small budget, targeted that first original set of networks, actually found some networks that were performing quite well and others that didn't actually perform compared to the viewership data that we were seeing on Fubo. And it wasn't until we had that confidence that there was a path there to scaling a highly performing campaign that we began to really build up on that initial budget. So it doesn't take much, frankly, for the same budget that you could launch a campaign on some of these additional digital channels in order to get enough data to validate if there is something there. I think you could do the same for television. So I would caution against the belief that it takes a ton of capital to really dip your toes on TV before you start seeing results. I think traditionally when folks look at television, there is this belief that you need to have a certain number of impressions and a certain degree of frequency before consumers take action. We certainly had that belief when we first started approaching television, and what we quickly found out is that if you have the right media mix, you have the right spot. It doesn't take 5 impressions, 4 impressions, 3 impressions for a consumer to take action. 1 impression might be enough if you're targeting the right audience, right? And if your message is very compelling. So it doesn't take that much. I think it's a point to validate whether the channel is there for you or not.
That's great. I think that's really helpful for those out there that are excited to get started. So, so Philippe, Alberto, I thank you so much for your time today, and I thank everyone for joining. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and just want to let everyone know that we'll be sending an email out to all the registrants with a link to the recording. So you'll have this, and it will live on thevab.com as well. So thanks again for everyone for joining. Have
Awesome.
a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Alberto. Take care.
Thank you.